Good evening. You're watching ARIRANG News at 8. It's Friday, January 17th here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I'm Geunhye. We begin this evening in New Delhi, where President Park Geun-hye is on the third day of a trip to India. The Korean leader attended a series of meetings with experts and business leaders there on the information technology front on this Friday. She pitched for greater cooperation in the ICT sector, saying that the two sides would create a great synergy effect, citing Korea's competitive hardware and India's prominent software industry. President Park told them that collaboration would promote sustainable economic growth, create new jobs in both countries, and open up new opportunities in the global market. Moving now to inter-Korean relations. South Korea rejected North Korea's call to scrap annual drills with the United States, adding that the reclusive state should start showing sincerity through its actions, not just with words. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee reports.
South Korea rebuffed on Friday North Korea's proposal to stop the cross-border mudslinging, saying the North should find concrete ways to demonstrate its sincerity if it wants to improve inter-Korean relations.
It is North Korea that has continued to slander us despite an earlier inter-Korean agreement not to use slander. The North must remember that trust between the two Koreas will be built through action, not words.
In what it called an important proposal Thursday, the North's National Defense Commission offered to initiate steps to ease tensions between the two Koreas if Seoul called off its annual military exercises with Washington that take place in early spring. Seoul reiterated the regular exercises will continue as long as the North poses a threat to the South.
Our military drills are annual defensive training exercises carried out by a sovereign state, and we officially notified neighboring countries, including North Korea, every year, as is the international custom.
Seoul said Pyongyang must take practical steps towards denuclearization to secure peace on the Korean peninsula, and called for a swift resumption of family reunions for those separated since the Korean War, which it said would be a first step toward friendlier inter-Korean ties. Experts say that with the rejection, relations between the two Koreas will be on thin ice, at least for now. South Korea remains wary of any new conciliatory gestures by the North. Just last year, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un proposed better inter-Korean ties in his New Year's Day speech, but followed that with a third nuclear test a month later. Hwang Sung-hee, ARIRANG News.
Well, North Korea has agreed to pay a hefty fine to retrieve one of its ships that was seized in Panama back in June. The Panamanian government officials said Thursday that Pyongyang had agreed to pay the fine, which amounts to $670,000. The North Korean ship, which was carrying 2 Cuban fighter jets and missiles, was intercepted en route to Cuba by Panamanian authorities last summer. 32 of the ship's 35 crew members will be set free, while the other 3, including the captain, will remain in custody for the time being. It looks like Japan is coming under greater international pressure to acknowledge its wartime atrocities. Over in Washington, the U.S. Senate approved a spending bill Thursday that urges Tokyo to apologize for its sexual enslavement of women during World War II. President Barack Obama is expected to sign it into law on Friday. Han Da-geun has more.
The U.S. Senate, for the first time in the history of U.S. legislation, has included the issue of the so-called comfort women in its spending bill. On Thursday local time, the Senate passed a bill that calls on the Japanese government to stick to a 2007 resolution which urged Tokyo to issue an official apology for its wartime sexual enslavement of women. The bill also calls on the U.S. Secretary of State to encourage Japan to address the issues raised in the resolution. Comfort women euphemistically refers to women forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during the Second World War. An estimated 200,000 women, mostly Korean, are known to have been abused as sex slaves by Japanese troops in the early 20th century. The bill will be taken to the White House for President Barack Obama's signature on Friday. Despite such an unprecedented call from the U.S. to apologize, some Japanese politicians are going in the opposite direction. A group of Japanese lawmakers who claim a comfort woman statue erected in the U.S. city of Glendale should be removed stormed into Glendale City Hall on Thursday to file a complaint. City officials, however, refused to meet them, saying there was no reason to remove the statue as it was built for humanitarian reasons. But the Japanese group didn't stop here. They waved Japanese flags and took pictures in front of the statue to the shock of passers-by. Attention is now focused on how the Japanese government will react following Washington's passing of the bill. 한다은, 아리랑 뉴스.
And here's the latest on the ongoing textbook debate in the U.S. state of Virginia over what to call the body of water between Korea and Japan. The state committee passed a bill on Thursday that calls for local public schools to identify the waters as the EC as well as the Sea of Japan. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
A bill that would require the body of water between Korea and Japan to be identified as both the EC and the Sea of Japan in local public school textbooks is moving through the Virginia state legislature. The bill submitted by Democrat David Marson was passed on Thursday with bipartisan support in a vote of 9-4 by the Virginia Senate's Education and Health Committee. This is the second attempt to pass a bill after it was voted down 2 years ago. Korea considers the name Sea of Japan as a legacy of Japan's imperialistic past, as it came into use during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the early 20th century. Japan claims the name was used way before that and is reportedly trying to block the bill by lobbying Virginia lawmakers. Senator Marson, however, defended the bill.
We're not changing U.S. policy. We're not changing the name of the ocean. It's taught in our SOLs and the guidelines to our standards of learning. We're merely reflecting what we're teaching children.
Korean Americans in Virginia welcomed the bill's approval but voiced concerns about the bill's future, pointing to the committee's 4 no votes. But if it's passed by the full Senate and the lower house of the legislature, the bill could take effect as early as July. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
In local politics, 3 sitting lawmakers have lost their seats in Korea's parliament after the Supreme Court on Thursday found them guilty of illegal electioneering. This means more work for the rival parties as they will need to gear up for by-elections set for July that is, on top of local elections in June. Our Kim Hyun-ji has the details.
It was the last thing Korea's major political parties wanted. But with the removal of 3 lawmakers on Thursday, by-elections will have to be held. The lawmakers told to clear their desks were found guilty of illegal electioneering ahead of the 2012 general elections. One of the 3 was a proportional representative, which means the person next in line on the ruling party's proportional representation ticket will automatically assume her position. But the constituencies previously represented by the 2 other lawmakers will have to elect a new lawmaker in July. At least 6 other lawmakers face the possibility of losing their seats on similar illegal electioneering charges and are awaiting the Supreme Court's final verdict. Political watchers say the shakeup means up to 15 seats could be up for grabs for the July by-election. By-elections are usually held twice a year in April and in October, but this year, the first by-election should be held on July 30th. This is because of a special provision that says a by-election should be held the first Wednesday that falls 50 days after local elections. This means, theoretically, that Korea will have 3 elections in the span of 5 months. The June 4th local elections, a by-election on July 30th, and another by-election on October 29th. The rival parties agree that they should reduce the number of elections from the current 3 to 2, but they differ on how to go about it. The ruling Saenuri party says the June local elections and the July by-election should be combined and held together in June. But the main opposition Democratic Party says the 2 by-elections should be combined and held in October. The rival parties have agreed to discuss the matter next week at the Special Parliamentary Committee to Reform Politics. Although both parties say their proposal is the best to reduce administrative costs and voter fatigue, pundits say their own political interests have certainly been taken into consideration. Kim Hyun-ji, ARIRANG News.
Touch base with journalists, experts, and analysts who are taking the pulse of Asia's heartbeat.
South Korea's defense minister.
In a lively half hour, join ARIRANG's Geunhye for the day's top stories, current affairs, business, technology trends, plus global weather forecasts and more. ARIRANG News. Every weeknight, live on ARIRANG TV.
As Samsung's presence in the global market is on the rise, the electronics giant has made the top 10 list of popular brands in 12 out of 15 countries, according to market researcher YouGov on Friday. The survey, which is based on whether respondents have heard anything positive or negative about a company, showed that Samsung was considered the most popular brand in Saudi Arabia. The company took second place in countries like China and Germany. YouGov attributed the country's rising global presence to its campaigns last year surrounding the launches of the Galaxy S4 smartphone and the NX Android camera. In the last of our five-part series on Korea's industrial competitiveness, we delve into the once red-hot smartphone market. Although it has been showing signs of slower growth, the information technology industry is set to explore new frontiers this year. Yoo Li-an tells us what's up and coming in the IT industry.
2014 will be the year when wearable technology takes off. Samsung burst onto the smartwatch scene last year.
Hey, pretty lady.
But the electronic giant's tagline haven't really worked with consumers. The company recently rolled out an upgraded Galaxy Gear smartwatch that allows users to control home appliances by remote. And with the Apple iWatch and Google Glass due to hit shelves this year, the stage has been set for a fierce competition to win consumers over with the latest wearable gadgets.
We need to build our own software for wearables. While Samsung's smartwatch is powered by Google Android, Google Glass uses its own software.
Korean companies are also jumping into another hot battleground this year, the so-called IoT market, or Internet of Things, connecting objects to objects. Take this service, for example. Press a button on your smartphone, and your car engine starts. If someone tries to break into your car, an alarm goes off in the car and on your smartphone.
By combining our IoT technology and a car servicing company, we've created a new service that allows you to monitor your car wherever you are.
Now, there's a familiar area in which electronics companies will try to make a comeback, and that's TVs. Ultra-high-definition TVs, to be exact. Ultra HD TVs offer 4 times the resolution of regular HD TVs, and the technology is expected to be the main driver of TV sales this year, especially with the upcoming Winter Olympics and World Cup. IT products by Samsung and other Korean companies were major contributors to the Korean economy in 2013.
Exports of IT products reached a record high last year, making up nearly a third of the country's overall exports. But Korea faces new challenges this year, with smartphones no longer considered a safe cash cow. The big question is, will Korean players remain as movers and shakers of the industry? Yoo Li-an, ARIRANG News.
And now to a health alert in Korea. Authorities have confirmed an outbreak of avian influenza at the poultry farm in the southern part of the country, in the nation's first case of the virus since 2011. The AI case in Jeollabuk-do province was first reported on Thursday, prompting authorities to call all 20,000 ducks there. Access to the area has been restricted, and farms in other provinces that recently purchased ducks from the Gochang farm are also taking precautionary measures against the virus. Korea's last avian influenza outbreak in 2011 resulted in the culling of 3 million birds. Over now to the constitutional referendum vote in Egypt. Turnout was low, but tallies pointed to a big yes vote on the interim government's new constitution. Supporters of ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi and his Muslim Brotherhood, however, boycotted the vote. Our Son Jung-in has the details.
Preliminary tallies indicate that more than 90% of the people who voted in Egypt are in support of the interim government's newly proposed constitution, according to state media reports. Egyptians formed long lines outside polling stations in major urban areas on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the turnout in Cairo and Alexandria was about 40%, which is higher than in a 2012 referendum on the Islamist-backed constitution. It was the first vote since Islamist President Mohamed Morsi was ousted by the military last July. The new constitution guarantees greater protection for the freedoms of belief and speech. It also guarantees equality between men and women and bans political parties from being formed based on religion, race, or geography. The overwhelming outcome nudges Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi a step closer to running for president. Experts say Sisi, who is extremely popular among his supporters, appears the only serious candidate, but he hasn't yet indicated whether he will run. The vote did not come without some resistance from Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood, which had called for a boycott. On the first day of voting, 9 people died in clashes involving Morsi's supporters. And on Thursday, students rallied outside the University of Cairo, resulting in confrontations with security forces that left 1 person dead and 4 injured. Some 400 people are said to have been arrested during the 2-day referendum for disrupting the vote. Mohamed Morsi, who was Egypt's first democratically elected president, is being held in jail in Alexandria and faces several criminal charges relating to his time in office. The Election Commission said the official results of the referendum will be announced Saturday evening local time, when it will also announce the date for presidential and parliamentary elections. 손정인, ARIRANG News.
Vatican delegates are facing their most intense public grilling in years over the church's handling of child sexual abuse by pedophile priests. Although the Vatican says there is no excuse for abuse, it says its ability to carry out legal punishment is limited. Our Connie Kim has more.
In what Pope Francis called the shame of the church, Vatican delegates are facing unprecedented public questioning by United Nations child protection experts about the history of sexual abuse of minors in the church. The hours-long proceedings were webcast live, and the delegates were grilled over the full scope of the child sex abuse scandals that have followed shocking revelations of abuse in the United States and several European nations in recent years. The delegates denied allegations that members of the clergy had hid rape cases to protect pedophile priests and said it had set clear guidelines to protect children from predator priests. Several Vatican officials, including the head of the Vatican delegation, Silvano Tomasi, expressed remorse over the scandals and said such crimes must never be excused.
For the Holy See, the whole problem of abuse of children is a wound that hurts the church as a community of faith.
Critics are demanding more transparency in how priests are punished for sexually abusing minors and compensation for the victims. Legal punishment, however, is highly unlikely. Vatican officials say the church has little legal basis for punishing clergy and that priests fall under the jurisdiction of their own nations. To tackle the issue, Pope Francis announced in December he would form a committee to investigate the issue. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
The citizens of Beijing are breathing a little easier today, one day after the fine dust levels in the capital soared dangerously high. The U.S. Embassy in Beijing says the level of ultrafine dust particles was hovering at around 160 micrograms per cubic meter on Friday. That's far lower than the more than 670 micrograms recorded on Thursday, a figure that's more than 26 times the safety limit set by the World Health Organization. Korea has been feeling the effects as well. The dust has blown over to the West Sea from China, prompting Korean authorities to issue their first ultrafine dust warning of the year on Friday. On the culture front, every country has an artist whose works define a generation and inspire other artists for decades. In Korea, that person is Park Geun-hye, whose 100th birthday is being celebrated through the largest retrospective ever to be held in the country. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won tells us how the exhibition seeks to revive interest in the beloved artist.
This is one of the most famous masterpieces by the late modern painter Park Geun-hye. Its depiction of Korean women squatting over a stream, doing their laundry, shows the painter's compassion for humanity and ordinary people who live humble lives. This signature feature of Park's paintings is also evident in his work The Old and the Young. In fact, Park was known for his depictions of ordinary people doing simple tasks, and his works convey something of the beauty of everyday life. Park Geun-hye was born in 1914 and taught himself to paint as a teenager. He died at the age of 52 in 1965, having never seen fame in his lifetime. Park struggled with poverty all his life and lived through the most turbulent period in modern Korean history, spanning from the period of Japan's colonial rule of the peninsula to the Korean War. His paintings are portraits of a modern Korea in development by an unpretentious observer. The eldest son of the late painter Park Sung-nam remembers the time his father drew a portrait of him when he was 4 in 1952.
This is a portrait of me that my father drew over a period of 5 hours. I think the picture symbolizes father-son relations in the sorrowful period after the Korean War, during which many families were separated.
The elder Park captured people at the market, street vendors, and old trees that symbolized endurance and hope in hard times.
Park Geun-hye's works have subdued granite colors, and they mostly show our humble neighbors, like the old, women, or playful children. Although his works are from a half-century ago, these people feel as familiar as if they were our neighbors today.
The exhibition is the largest retrospective of Park Geun-hye ever held in Korea and displays about 120 of the painter's works. The exhibition continues until mid-March at Gana Insa Art Center in Central Seoul. Park Ji-won, ARIRANG News.
We here in the capital suffered from high levels of fine dust this morning. Let's find out if the conditions have improved a bit by going over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center for an update. Now, Bo-kyung, what can you tell us?
Well, Ji-hye, this morning, some parts of Seoul fine dust readings jumped to 224 micrograms per cubic meter, which is about 6 times the normal levels. However, the warning was called off at 4 p.m., so we can all breathe a little easier for now. Taking a look at the current conditions, the nation is at the edge of a high-pressure system from China, which is why we're seeing clouds move in. Now, although fine dust has cleared out of Seoul, the southern regions will continue to see high levels through later tonight. But the good news is that this weekend looks to be perfect for outdoor activities as temperatures will remain in the seasonal average range with clear skies. Other than that, snow is forecast for Monday, which will hopefully relieve some of the dry conditions we've had recently. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at -2 degrees with a high of 2. Meanwhile, Gwangju and Busan hit 5 and 7 degrees respectively. Moving on to other regions, Daejeon makes it to 2 degrees, while Dokdo and Mount Kumgang top out at 3 and -5 degrees respectively. Well, hope you have a wonderful Friday night. That's all I have for you this hour, and let's take a look at the international weather.
that's our broadcast on this Friday evening. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul. Thanks for watching.